contention from however many naysayers I have that I've touched on a couple of times. I wanted to give more time to discuss it because, one, I feel like I haven't fully validated it enough. I still don't feel like I'm going to do a whole video about it. And I'm kind of tired of the way some people are characterizing it. So, but no, I want to talk about my stance on the value and the dangers of isolating Black children away from other Black people. That's essentially what it comes down to. It probably started on the Will Smith video. I made a point about how Carlton was intrinsically damaged by the fact that he was forced to grow up in a community where he was one of very few Black children. And talking about Candace Owens, I compared it to freaking Gabby from Attack on Titan. I talked about a lot with that particular space. And I went on record, and I'm going to say this again on record. I do not think it's good for Black children to be in a fly in the milk experience. And there is research that indicates that, specifically in the education setting, which is where I got this take from. The fly in the milk experience is not good for Black youth. And explain it not just from like my perspective and my experiences, but also bring up some research. So I'll just run down some of the shit, like literally. So y'all know I was a teacher for 10 years, right? So like, this is not me pulling this out my ass. Like literally, if you know anybody who's in education and who's in the process of educating Black children, you know that there is a lot of work and research around the best ways to teach Black children and how issues of race and culture impact how Black children learn. This is not like this is not a radical hotep, extremist, ethno-nationalist, whatever term you want to use, take. This is something that any teacher that teaches Black children will be able to tell you, that when Black children have culturally incompetent teachers, especially Black boys, they are harmed by that experience. And the easiest predictor of that is that Black child the only Black child or one of very few Black children in a school or in a neighborhood or in a community? That is the indicator. Now, what I want to be clear on is that I'm not saying, and this is where I think I messed up before. First off, I'm not saying that a non-Black space for a Black child is automatically toxic for every child. Although there's almost always going to be conflict around race when you are a minority, even if you are a Asian child in an all-white space or a white child in an all Latino space, etc. There's going to be conflict because that's what being a minority translates to in a majority situation. And there's plenty of research that indicates that when schools are desegregated, Black children do better in certain factors and test scores and stuff like that. But the question I want to challenge people with is, why is that? I am pretty confident that, and I don't have to, let me not say I'm confident. The research clearly shows. So Black children that are the fly in the milk experience probably on average will score higher on certain markers than Black children in lower income or less segregated schools. That is something that is easily found in the literature. The question is why? Do y'all really think that just putting Black children in the space as white children at a white school just magically makes those Black children be better at school? If you do, you're stupid and a racist. That's not what happens. When you desegregate a school, or when a school goes from being all white to all white with a sprinkle of Black, and those Black kids do better, the first thing you have to point out is that 9 times out of 10, those Black kids are also coming from higher socioeconomic statuses, which will increase their academic outcomes baseline regardless. So if you have right now, I have two little boys and they're going to a predominantly Black school. But if I took them way out to a different side of Atlanta, that's all white, to Cobb County or Johns Creek or something that's predominantly white, it won't be the whiteness that changes their educational outcome. It'll be the fact that I'm paying for piano lessons, I'm paying for tutoring, I'm paying for the best pediatrician I can find. I have time and energy, especially from the work I do now, that when we pick them up from school, we're going to have dinner at a table. We're going to have dinner. You see what I'm saying? I'm going to help them with homework. And furthermore, and that's just the in-household resources, right? Then you have the school resources. So if my kids went to a worse Black school, they wouldn't have access to the best teachers. They wouldn't have access to the best technology. They wouldn't have access to the best resources. They wouldn't have so many things that make certain educational outcomes better. Those things, because we live in a country that ties educational funding to tax funding, which categorically will create disparity between rich and poor when it comes to education. Because of that, if I take my kids to a more rich area to be around white kids, all those other features of privilege will increase their educational outcomes, period. Racism aside. However, so I'll come to my first little bit of research. So one of the papers I found showed that once you control for things like family income, once you control for things like community status and all these other factors that play into how well a child does in school, the improvements from going from an all black community to an all white community for a Black child pretty much disappear. And further, they actually get worse later in life. And I would argue, this is me adding my own personal spin to it. I would argue that the experience that a lot of young Black people have growing up in that fly in the milk experience, they may have great educational achievement, but the trauma that you build up being the only Black person in an all white space where those white people are not culturally competent, that will weigh on you for the rest of your life. And I've had people, when I've had this conversation before in other chats, talk about how they were having anxiety attacks going to their private schools and couldn't function properly until they got out and went to a normal public school around more Black children. This, and I'm saying this, I want to be clear. When you are like the thing of microaggressions and how that affects the way you see yourself, how that affects you move through the world, you don't get that when you're around your own people the same. You might get a little bit, you might get some colorism microaggressions. Some of y'all motherfuckers with this biracial discourse, you might get some of that, but you're not gonna get, oh, you're really smart. So you see how I said that, right? It's not an insult, but the way it comes off, it's like, I didn't expect you to be smart. Well, why didn't you? And you do that enough, it creates baggage. And that's what those kids deal with in these schools. They deal with baggage of having to represent Blackness as children. I'm going to come back to that. Another study. I'm just going through these studies real quick. So going back to, because the main reason why I wanted to start there is because I had a lot of people argue that going to a better school in a better neighborhood gave them better opportunities. And that is not incorrect. And I want to be clear that I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that your opportunity structure is categorically better based on being apart from being immersed in whiteness. I'm not saying that. I'm not doing self-segregation, and I'm not doing ethnocentrism. You know what I'm saying? My kids go to school with white kids. It's not the majority at their school, but it's not a factor. The factor for me from my kids' school was Black teachers, Black administration. Because here's another factoid. A study from such and such, you'll see it. I'll put all this in the description, shows that children are less likely to be disciplined and suspended by teachers and administrators who are the same race as they are. Now, why do you think that is? Do y'all remember, let me see if I can pull it up actually. Y'all remember this viral video that was really popular? He had a bunch of these videos in the late Obama era. This dude had a lot of these videos. Do y'all see this? All right, so this is Ron Clark from the Ron Clark Academy. This is a private public school in Atlanta. I don't know the full details of how they get down. I know it's private, and I know they're very selective about their process, but their process doesn't exclude kids of a lower socioeconomic status. And so you see this white man in the middle doing the dance with the little babies. It was real cute in Obama era. He stopped doing this shit after Trump got elected. He's smart. Because this shit don't give off the same energy that it used to. But for a while, this was dope. This was really cute. We liked it, right? We liked it because what Ron Clark, and he's made himself rich by teaching other people what he's doing. It's weird. It is weird, Nakia. I agree. And it don't quite feel right. Like he's only famous for doing it because he's white. Because like black folks been dancing with their kids in classrooms forever. So, but that's getting a little bit off topic. But if you go and you look up his work and his research, because it's all black schools, what he was doing is removing what's called deficit educational policy from his classroom. And so what deficit education, deficit learning is basically this belief that the problem with black people is that they're not white enough. They're not amenable enough to white society. And so the way we're going to close gaps, the way we're going to fix black people's problems is by bringing them closer to whiteness. That's really like so much of policy around race has operated off of that philosophy. That's why critical race theory is so important, because real critical race theory, not just like the history and, whatever else, is breaking down how systemically race is, how entrenched it is into the culture, and how no matter what you do as a black person, you will never be white. And thus there will always be a deficit for you in society, right? I always bring up that the first black president, so yes, he became the president. Awesome, right? But Barack Obama was a traditionally attractive, masculine, tall, well-spoken, highly educated, one of the most educated presidents we've had in the last however many years. Like all across the board, the only problem he had was being black. And like literally, we see what the Republican Party did to him and has been since he was president. Now, this is not me endorsing his presidency. I've made 2 whole fucking videos about it. Go watch. But it is important to point out that if anybody was going to be assimilated and treated as an equal, it was a Barack Obama. So the whole idea that you can take a black child and put him in a white environment and he'll improve automatically is based off of a deficit learning ideology. It's based off of the idea that what we need to do to black children is make them whiter, make them more amenable to whiteness. We need to give them white names. We need to make them respect authority. We need to make them polite and deferential. We need to make them humble. You know what I'm saying? We need to do all these things that essentially are asking us to diminish our blackness. And then once we do that, everything will be okay. That's Thomas Sowell's whole career, by the way, is that it's the culture of poverty and blackness and dysfunction that creates that makes black people dysfunctional in this country. But again, history and research show that not to be true, that even when black people do all the right things, they will still be faced with white supremacy. So going back to the last piece of research I talked about, this paper talks about how, and going back to Ron Clark. So Ron Clark said, instead of doing deficit learning and trying to force these black children to reduce the cultural texture that they're used to, because I'm gonna be real. Let me say, I'm just talking about me. So what I'm about to say is not meant to characterize all black people. Okay. However, my niggas is loud. My niggas like to show out. My folks like to be seen. My folks like to express themselves. My folks don't like to sit in the seat and learn rudimentary style education. So if you look up Ron Clark's tactics, his classrooms are mobile. They're interactive. They're loud. They're culturally relevant. I don't think they're learning Shakespeare in his school. Because like, if the whole point of learning Shakespeare is to learn certain reading skills, why can't you do that with something that's not fucking Shakespeare? And further, when you have teachers who do not understand this about, this happens a lot with black girls too. I want to be clear on that. When you have teachers that do not understand the nuances of the way black people communicate, nuances on black cultural aesthetics, black, traditional frameworks of like how you interact with elders, you're going to have teachers that feel threatened, teachers that feel that a child is unruly, teachers that feel that a child is unteachable or incapable of certain styles of learning. And that is manifested in the school to prison pipeline. That's manifested in FD is over party too for generalizing black people. That's manifested in school to prison pipeline. Is manifested in the overrepresentation of black boys in special education and the criminal justice system. It's so many things. And that's why that evidence, there's so much research on this that's not even hard to find. That when children have black teachers, it increases not just like their test scores, but their lifelong outcomes. But that's for all teachers. Having good teachers or teachers that you connect with. So that's the other thing I wanted to touch on, to kind of like for a second pull it out of race. So there's one paper from 2010, it looks like. Students who are racial minorities are more likely to be big victims of bullying. Bullying dynamics associated with race, ethnicity, and immigration status. And this came from Handbook of Bullying in Schools. And what they're getting at is how certain styles of bullying and ostracism are scarring in a different type of way. Because it doesn't just make you feel bad in the moment, it others you from a community. And that experience of being othered is like I was saying with Joe a second ago, that experience of being othered, that type of bullying experience fundamentally perverts your ability to interact with other people because you've had certain structures of how human interaction works broken. And if it's not rebuilt, it's hard to do that. Any student, white or black, is going to do better at a school where they feel like they belong, where they feel like they're supported, and where they feel like they're part of a community. That is harder to do when you have racist ass shit going on at your school, or subtly racist shit going on at your school. You see, y'all know I went to a HBCU. I don't know the full details of the statistics, right? Because people will fudge statistics, especially, we start telling myths about certain accomplishments around HBCUs, I think sometimes. But it's like a well understood thing that HBCUs create a disproportionate amount of black professionals in this country. That an HBCU, again, not perfect, not all of them, can take a young person who, was a marginal to okay student in high school and turn them into a high-end professional after 4 years because of what it feels like to be surrounded by your people and enriched in a specific type of nurturing environment that you may not have gotten in high school and you can't always get at a predominantly white college. And so that has nothing to do with an explicit feeling of racism from a particular white person. That is not a responsibility of a particular white person. That is not a specific white teacher having a low opinion of black children and thus treating them differently. That is the absence of understanding how blackness affects my daily decisions. That is the thing that most white people don't understand about race. That when the police are around, I genuinely fear for my life and think through my behavior in a way that is natural to me, but probably would be foreign to them. But if you don't get that, if you don't get the reality of having to constantly negotiate your blackness in every space you're in, you will not understand how to get to those children and get the most out of them. And I guarantee you that, and this is, again, the research shows this, that when you provide the resources for black children and black teachers and black communities, you see very different outcomes from those children that have nothing to do with race and everything to do with structure. When we're talking about self-segregation, it's not the same as when a white person only wants to hang out with white people. What it is a process of surviving. That's the point here. It's the need either to be safe or feel safe. Does that make sense? It's not I don't like white people and I don't want them around. It's being around white people can be literally unsafe, frustrating if you have to continue to explain things, explain your humanity, or just outright exhausting because you have to perform a safe version of blackness within that space. That is why having black spaces is useful, important, and research-based, beneficial to black people. Drake Larson, thank you for the $5, asks, what do you say to black parents who want their students to be properly educated and the predominantly black schools in the area aren't up to par? That's a tough question. What options do you have? I'm not a huge proponent of charter schools, but like if that's your only option is like a seriously deficient school that is not going to serve your child, or a charter school that is a part of a bigger problem, but will at least provide a useful education for your child, I don't begrudge you for making that decision for your family. There's a lot more lot more value in homeschool since the pandemic than before. So maybe there's options there. But also, like, real talk, you'd be surprised at how good the outcomes can be at these deficient schools. All of these deficient schools have star students that score high, that do well. It's just navigating the complex problems that can be present in some of these low performing, high risk schools. It's not like so much, the danger, worried about your school, your child getting, shot or getting involved with a gang or something. That's not, that's a problem in some places, but it's not like as existential of a threat. Like, I've taught in those schools before. I never felt unsafe. But if you can imbue your child with a certain level of, self-determination and confidence, and teach them how to navigate. If there's one thing that black schools love to their detriment, so that one thing that low performing black schools love, it's their smart kids. And so, like, real talk, you will get more out of your child, will have more benefits being the smartest kid in a lower performing all black school than being an average kid in a higher performing mixed or white school. Because at that all black school, there's going to be so many different opportunities and so much more support from the community around. Because what black people do, and this is not always a good thing because it creates, elitism at some levels. But like when you're in a low performing black school, like, who the kids that's going to make it are. Now remember this, like, I remember the kids that's going to make it. And that kid that's going to make it, every teacher has an eye on them. Every teacher is encouraging them. Every teacher, every principal is doing their best to make sure that there's opportunity. So don't think just because a school is predominantly black and has low test scores that there aren't success stories that come out of it. I got a homeboy I may end up talking to for a video, not a homeboy, a former student who scored like a 1800 on the SAT at a school I used to teach at, and then got popped for armed robbery the next week and went away for 10 years. And in that time frame, they, the school still supported that boy, made sure he graduated before he went into to serve his time, did a lot to support him because he was one of our good ones, So it's not so simple.